Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I know you could be anywhere else right now, but you chose to be here, and I really appreciate that. I'm not here to talk about numbers or contracts or quarterly reports. I'm here to tell you a story about leaving the place where I was born to search for something bigger. It's not just a story about escaping, but about moving toward a purpose. It all started a long time ago in South Africa when I was 17 years old and made the decision to leave everything behind in pursuit of a dream, to help shape the future of humanity. Part one, the starting vector, sort of clarifying the issue people, especially the press. They like to talk about the reasons, romanticize them, they create a narrative. The story they like is I escaped South Africa because I didn't want to serve in the military. And you know, that's basically true. It was. And in South Africa, they had apartheid. And military service was mandatory for white males. You had to serve in the SADF, the South African Defense Force. And the idea of spending 2 years basically trying to suppress black people, it didn't seem like a good use of time. It wasn't good. Obviously, that whole system, it was a very problematic system. In Ashley Vance's biography, I think I made it clear I didn't want to participate in upholding a system like that. It didn't align with my values. But to be honest, it was more than values. It was illogical. I looked at that system even as a kid, and it was stupid. It was badly designed. You have a system allocating resources, education, opportunity, voting rights, based on a completely arbitrary variable of race. It's incredibly inefficient. It wastes a vast amount of human potential. It could not last. It was fundamentally architecturally flawed. So, yeah, I didn't want to be a part of that stupid machine. I didn't want to waste 2 years of my life supporting something that was obviously wrong and also inevitably going to fail. So I didn't go the real reason, the personal reason. But that's not the whole story. To be honest, it's probably not even the main reason. The main reason, it's more complex and more personal. People don't like to talk about these things. My childhood, it was not great. It was pretty miserable, actually. South Africa at that time, the culture, it was extremely violent, like a level of violence that it was insane. And I'm not just talking about the political context, I'm talking about everyday life. I was bullied mercilessly at school. I mean, not the kind of bullying, getting teased. I mean, getting beaten up, really beaten up. My brother Kimball has told the story one time. A group, they pushed me down a flight of stairs and then they beat me until I blacked out. I was in the hospital for a week. They tried to kill me. So, school was not a safe haven. It was like Lord of the Flies. And then my home situation was also very difficult. I lived with my father after my parents divorced, and he's a very complex human being. I've said in an interview that he's a terrible human being. And the press gave me a lot of flack for that. How dare you say that about your father? But it's true, he has done terrible things, just very evil. The experience of growing up in that house, it was constant psychological torture. Kimball has said, my father would scream at us for hours, call us idiots, worthless, pathetic. When I decided to leave for Canada, he told me I was an idiot. That I would fail. That I would come back in 3 months with my tail between my legs. So you get a picture. On one side, physical violence at school. On the other, psychological violence at home. It was a trauma bond, as Rolling Stone called it. It was misery. When that is your familiar environment, then the escape isn't an option. It's a necessity for survival. It also it frames your risk tolerance a lot. People are afraid to take risks. They're afraid of failure. they're afraid of going broke, because they're afraid of being miserable. When you grow up in misery, you're not afraid of it anymore. You know, you can handle it. When you've been at the bottom psychologically, the prospect of financial bankruptcy seems pretty manageable. So the escape wasn't an act of bravery. It was an act of desperation, an act of self-preservation. I had to leave. I did all kinds of weird jobs. First, I went to Saskatchewan and worked on my cousin's farm. I shoveled grain. I gardened vegetables. Then I went to Vancouver. I cut logs. Literally worked in a lumber mill with a chainsaw. Part 2, Recalibrating Fear. The Philosophical Foundation books. So when I was in that situation, I read a lot, like a lot. I read the entire library. I read the encyclopedia. I found more comfort in books than in real life, for sure. And there were a couple of books that really shaped how I thought about everything. The first was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it's a very funny book, but it has a deep philosophy. It basically taught me that the question is the hard part. The answer is relatively easy. The universe is the answer. But what is the right question? The question wasn't, can I survive in South Africa? The question was, where do I want to go? And how do I get out of here and get to the place where the future is being made? And that question changed everything. And the other book was the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. And if you haven't read it, you should. It's basically about the fall of the Galactic Empire and the effort of a group of scientists to preserve knowledge, to preserve consciousness through the coming Dark Age, to shorten the Dark Age from years to just years. That hit me hard. It still does. It gave me a mission, a purpose that was bigger than my own personal misery. The mission is we must preserve and expand consciousness. We must ensure that the tiny candle of human consciousness doesn't get snuffed out. So you see, the escape wasn't just running from something, it was running to something. It was the first logical step in trying to fulfill that mission. You can't, help preserve consciousness if you're stuck in an illogical system that's trying to crush you. The Canadian stepping stone, an experiment in existence. So I left for Canada. My mother is Canadian. She was born in Saskatchewan, so I could get a Canadian passport. It was a stepping stone. The goal was always America. America was where opportunity actually meant opportunity, especially for technology. But Canada was the path to get there. I arrived with basically nothing. I think I had about $1 for my father and $1 for my mother, and that was it. No safety net, no penthouse apartment waiting for me. I didn't need a safety net. I could take massive risks because I knew the worst case really wasn't that bad. Certainly not as bad as staying in South Africa. And then I did the worst job I've ever had, by far. I went to the unemployment office and I asked, what's the highest paying job? And they said, well, you can clean the boiler room at a lumber mill in the other side of town. It paid $1 an hour, which was huge money in. So I said, great, I'll take it. I didn't fully understand what the job was. You have to put on this hazmat suit and you have to crawl through a very small tunnel where you can barely fit, and you get inside this giant boiler, and it's still hot as hell. And you have to shovel all this hot, sticky sand and gunk out while you're lying on your stomach. It was horrible. And here's the fun part. People started that job on the first day. By the third day, there were 5 of us left. And by the end of the week, there were 3 of us, me and 2 other guys. I did it. and it sucked. But it taught me something. It taught me that I could endure extreme physical discomfort to achieve a goal. Later, when I got to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario in 2009, I did another experiment, a personal one. I wanted to find out what the lower bound of existence was. What's the biggest fear in taking a risk, like starting a company? It's you fail, you lose all your money, and you starve. You can't eat. So I thought, okay, let's quantify that problem. I tried living on $1 a day. I went to the grocery store and I bought a huge bulk supply of hot dogs and oranges, and occasionally some pasta. And I did it. It wasn't very tasty, but I survived, and that was an illuminating moment, because I realized, oh, okay, if I can survive on $1 a day, at least on food cost, then earning $1 a month seems pretty easy. You understand? By doing that boiler room job 26 and by doing that $1 a day experiment 30, I had eliminated the fear of failure. I had eliminated the downside. The downside wasn't this undefined, scary thing. The downside was quantified. The downside was eating hot dogs and oranges. And I knew I could do that. Neil deGrasse Tyson later called that a launch pad to any destination. And he was right, absolutely right. I didn't need a high-paying job. Part 3, reasoning from first principles, the problem with analogical thinking. This gets me to the core point about how to think. Most people in the world, they reason by analogy. And what that means is they look at how other people do something and they copy it. They iterate on it with maybe very small changes. They build on the assumptions of other people. This is herd thinking. If I had reasoned by analogy in South Africa, I would have said, well, what are all the other year-old white kids doing? Oh, they're signing up for the army. So I guess I should do that too. That's reasoning by analogy, and it leads to very bad outcomes. If you reason by analogy in business, you say, well, cars have always had internal combustion engines. So I guess I'll just try to make the internal combustion engine % more efficient. Or rockets. Rockets cost X, a huge amount. So I guess they must just be that expensive. You accept the premises. You accept the assumptions. And you get stuck in a very small solution space. Physics thinking. First principles. There is a better way. A much harder way, but better. It's the physics framework. It's first principles thinking. Physics teaches you to reason from first principles, not by analogy. This means you boil everything down to their most fundamental truths, the axioms, the things you know are true, and then you reason up from there. Let's apply this to my escape. Okay, analogical thinking says it's crazy. You can't just leave your country with no money. First principles thinking asks, what are the truths? Truth, I am in South Africa. Truth, I do not want to be in South Africa. I want to get to America, all right? Canada's the pathway to America. Problem, I need a passport to leave. First principle, am I legally eligible for a Canadian passport through my mother? Answer, yes. Solution, get the passport. Problem, I need money for a plane ticket and initial living expenses. First principle, am I physically capable of doing labor to earn money? Answer, yes. First principle, what is the minimum cost to live? Answer, very low, about $1 a day. Solution, earn a small amount of money and take the risk. You see, when you break it down to its first principles, the impossible, crazy problem becomes a series of achievable steps. All the social convention about what one should do just melts away. Get enough capital to hopefully one day do something about thing 2 and thing 3. So you see, it's not a random series of events. It's a trajectory, a plan driven by the same operating system toward the same set of goals. You're left with only the physical truths. Now apply to SpaceX. This is the classic example. After PayPal, I wanted to get humans to Mars, so I went to Russia. I was trying to buy a refurbished intercontinental ballistic missile to send a small payload to Mars. And they wanted so much money, like $1 million for one rocket. And I thought, wait, that doesn't feel right. Why are they so expensive? Analogical thinking says rockets are expensive. That's just a fact. First principles thinking asks, what is a rocket made of? Well, it's made of aerospace grade aluminum alloys, some titanium, copper, carbon fiber. Okay, next question. What is the value of those materials on the commodity market? And it turns out the materials cost of a rocket is only about % of the typical selling price, 2%. So the question becomes, can we buy the raw materials cheaply and build the rocket ourselves? And the answer was yes. Yes, we can. And that's SpaceX, America, and the three things. So I got to America via Canada. I got to the University of Pennsylvania. I chose America because that's where the innovation was happening. America is still the land of opportunity more than any other place on Earth, for sure, especially in the mid-90 seconds. The internet was exploding. And when I was at Penn, I thought a lot about the future. Not what do I want my career to be, but what will most profoundly affect the future of humanity. And I came to three things. Number one, the internet, a global nervous system basically allowing billions of people to communicate and access almost all the world's knowledge almost instantly. That's a big deal. Number two, the transition to a sustainable energy economy. And number three, the expansion of life beyond Earth. The escape from South Africa was necessary because that environment was not addressing any of those three things. Coming to America was logical because it was the epicenter of thing one, the internet, starting Zip2, and then X.com, which became PayPal 8. That was my way of participating in the internet revolution. And it was also a way to get enough petting the farm and failing, the second escape, leaving safety after PayPal. We sold it to eBay. I was the largest shareholder, so I made a lot of money, about $1 million after taxes. And I had a choice. The safe choice, the analogical choice, was to retire. You know, buy an island in the Caribbean, drink Mai Tais on the beach. A lot of .com millionaires did that. We were still completely stuck on this one planet. So I had to escape again, this time escaping from financial safety and comfort. I took all of that $1 million and I split it up. I put $1 million into SpaceX, $1 million into Tesla, and $1 million into Solar City. I literally bet everything. My friends, they thought I was insane. They tried to talk me out of it. They showed me video compilations of rockets blowing up. They said, Elon, you know nothing about rockets. You know nothing about cars. And I said, yes, I know, but these things are important. They have to happen. Rock bottom. And everything failed. Spectacularly was the worst year of my life, for sure. It was so hard. Just imagine this SpaceX. We had 3 launch failures in a row. 3. The rockets just kept blowing up. First one failure, second one failure, third one failure. We were almost out of money. We had scraped together everything left in the company for 1/4 launch. Just one more try. If if that fourth launch failed, SpaceX was dead. Game over. At the same time, Tesla was hemorrhaging money. We were trying to produce the Roadster, and it had all sorts of production and quality problems. The plant was full of flawed cars that we couldn't deliver, and right then the global financial crisis hits, the worst since the Great Depression. Nobody wanted to invest in a startup electric car company that was failing miserably. Are you kidding me? When we would call investors, they wouldn't even take the call, or if they did, they yelled at me. They were angry that I dared to call them for money, and I was also getting divorced at the same time. So 3 failed launches, car company dying, financial crisis, broke, divorced. It was brutal. I remember vividly, I woke up one Sunday morning, right before Christmas, and I just thought, man, I never thought I was the kind of person who could have a nervous breakdown, but I felt this is the closest I've ever come, the lesson of failure. So why not quit? Every rational person would quit because that $1-a-day experiment, because that boiler room, because when you've actually hit rock bottom, you say, okay, what is the worst that can happen? SpaceX dies, Tesla dies, I lose all my money. So what? I'm not going to starve to death. I'm not going to die of exposure. I still have my brain. I can go get a job. I can live on $1 a day if I have to. I had removed that fear years ago. So we kept going. We didn't give up. We scraped everything we had into that fourth launch of the Falcon. Both companies, Tesla and SpaceX, were weeks away from dying of cash starvation. And September, the fourth launch, it worked. It made it to orbit, just barely. And on Christmas Eve, NASA called. They gave us the commercial resupply contract, a $1 billion contract. That contract saved us. It saved both companies. So the lesson is this: one, failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you're not innovating enough. You're playing it too safe. You're reasoning by analogy. And two, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. You have to try, even if the probable outcome is failure. If the goal is important, your personal failure doesn't matter. The mission is what matters. The war for signal, leadership is being present. When things got really bad at Tesla, again, during the model production hell, I started sleeping on the factory floor. I had a sleeping bag, and I slept under my desk, right on the production line. And the press, they went crazy again. They thought it was a PR stunt. They wrote these mocking articles about people starting a GoFundMe to buy Elon a couch. It was not a stunt, but I did it for a very specific reason. The reason was when your team is working, when they are in pain, when they are sacrificing everything to save the company, they need to see their leader is also there in the trench with them. They need to see me right there, sleeping on the damn floor, smelling the metal dust when I wake up. It wasn't about comfort. It was about presence. It told the whole team, I am not going to escape from you. I am not going to flee to comfort while you are fighting the war. It made a huge difference. And the permanent escape, leaving the herd mentality. This brings me to a final point. The real escape, it never ends. It's not a one-time event when it's a process. A constant struggle. The real permanent escape is the escape from the comfort of herd thinking, from what everyone says is right, or is polite, or is acceptable. It's the war to distinguish signal from noise. I left South Africa because I saw a system that was obviously racist and corrupt and illogical, and I said, that is wrong. I'm leaving. And today I look at South Africa from afar, and I see things that are very, very disturbing. I see the current ANC government 5-3 pushing things that look to me to also be fundamentally racist. You know, when they sing songs about shooting the boar, when you have politicians openly talking about taking land without compensation based on race, when I post that, they are actively promoting genocide of white people. And oh man, people, they go crazy. They call me a racist. They say, oh, he comes from apartheid wealth. He's a African American white privileged. They try to use my birthplace to discredit me. They completely ignore the fact that I left precisely because I didn't like that system. They ignore the boiler room. They ignore the $1 a day experiment. They ignore sleeping on the factory floor. It's noise. So much noise. The signal is I am trying to be consistent. To me, racism is wrong. It's always wrong. It's illogical. And I don't care who is doing it. Racism against black people is wrong. And racism against white people is also wrong. This seems non-controversial to me, but we live in very strange times. The escape from herd thinking is the hardest escape of all, because the herd hates it. The herd will attack you for leaving it. That's why I think X is so important. It has to be a digital town square where people can debate these ideas, where the signal has a fighting chance against the noise. The final mission, preserving the candle. Why bother with any of this? Why bother with public discourse? Why bother with electric cars? Why go to Mars? It comes back to the Foundation series. It comes back to consciousness, human consciousness, our self-awareness. It's a very rare and precious thing. For all we know, it might be unique. It is a tiny flickering candle in the vast cold dark of the universe, and it's so fragile it could go out very, very easily. And an asteroid impact 19, a supervolcano, a third world war with nuclear weapons, and an unchecked AI that decides we are a nuisance, or just the slow collapse of civilization from collective stupidity and herd thinking that refuses to face reality. The whole entire point of Tesla is to prove that sustainable energy is better than fossil fuels, to try to stop the worst case climate catastrophe scenario. The whole entire point of SpaceX is to create a backup of humanity, a life insurance
policy, to make a self-sustaining city on Mars, to make sure that if something terrible happens on Earth, that candle of consciousness does not go out.
That is the final escape, the escape from extinction, the escape from self-destruction. Your call to action, now is the time. So you guys, most of you are young. Now's the time to take risks. You probably don't have kids, you don't have mortgages, you don't have a bunch of obligations. 5-2, as you get older, your obligations, they increase. Once you have a family, you start taking risks, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. And it gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now's the time to do that, before you have those obligations. What is your escape? Your familiar environment that you need to escape from. It might not be an apartheid state. It might be a job that you hate. It might be a college major your parents picked for you that you don't believe in. It might just be a bad assumption, a piece of analogical thinking. Like, oh, I can't start that company because how do startups fail? Yeah, so what? Maybe yours is the 10th. Maybe it's important enough that you should try. Even if the probable outcome is failure, you have to try. Conclusion, be useful. So go do something bold. You won't regret it. You might regret not doing it. That's the real fear, regret. Use first principles. Boil your problem down to the basic truths and reason up from there. Work. Work stupidly hard. Work harder than anyone else. I've said this before, it's just simple math. If someone else is working hours a week and you are working hours a week, you will get twice as much done in the same 1 year period. And try to be useful. Just try to be useful. If you wake up every morning and you try to make the world a little bit better, if you contribute more than you consume, then that is a life worth living. The future is up to you. The future of consciousness depends on people who are willing to escape from the present, from mediocrity, from the herd. So please go and create that future. Don't let it down. Thanks.